Loved by health enthusiasts for its natural nutrients and bold flavor, raw milk's a touchy subject these days. It's catching heat from regulators and skeptics over safety concerns, but what's the truth about this controversial food? Our guest today is the founder and CEO of one of the nation's leading producers of raw whole foods. From raw milk to artisan cheeses, he's built a company committed to making real, unprocessed nutrition accessible. A retired medical educator and EMS paramedic, he also founded the Raw Milk Institute, setting safety and quality standards that have shaped the industry. This is the story of Raw Farm with Mark McAfee. Mark, so glad to have you on.
Thank you, Casper. Good introduction.
You've done the EMS, you've had your medical days, behind you and everything. You've spent a lot of time there. We just talked, you did 16,000 or so, different calls and everything. How do you transition from medicine into raw foods and raw milk?
Well, after 16 years of doing 24-hour shifts and teaching paramedics and mentoring and precepting and teaching and all that stuff, you come to a point in your life where I've seen humanity. I've seen humanity in its barest form, in most emotional, destroyed, wounded place. And I've experienced that. So when you get to that point, you say, okay, is this going to be my entire life? Am I going to do this for the rest? Or am I going to do something else to fix it, right?
Right.
And so my grandparents had passed away in the late 1990s and left 1,000 acres of land for my brothers and I. And my brothers didn't want to farm. They were off doing venture capital stuff and alternative energy stuff and Silicon Valley stuff, doing very successful things. And, I was kind of done with 24-hour shifts and dead bodies. And it was like, I need to change to implement what I've learned into something new. So we took over our family farms and we decided we were going to serve people, not the processor. And that was the critical foundation of everything that led me to raw milk.
Yeah. And could you go into the history a little bit? Because I was doing a little bit of research and, there are people out there that called out the Rockefellers of the early 1900s as the people that started to change the whole milk industry and why we thought of raw milk as something. But listen, throughout history, we've been drinking all types of milks that were unpasteurized. Louis Pasteur came around, pasteurized and changed. But can you go into that history? Where did things start to really change from this idea of just drinking milk directly from the source to having to process it?
Great question. Foundational question to the whole discussion. Scientists tell us we've been drinking raw milk from other mammals, whether it be cows, sheep, horses, camels, reindeer, for about 12 to 14,000 years, someplace in there, in various places around the world, including the Maasai, Mongolians in Mongolia. Literally every race in the world had a contact with some kind of mammal that they domesticated. And that served a really important evolutionary purpose because if you had a portable source of whole food nutrition, you didn't starve.
Yeah.
You didn't have to hunt, fish, or farm or gather. You had your food right there on four legs. And if you had grass and you had sunshine and some rain, then you had food today and the babies would thrive. And so if, the Hindus said that the cow was the mother of the universe because if the mother human died, the cow would nourish the baby, fully nourish the baby. So a long, long history of drinking raw milk. But let's fast forward to, let's say, the 17 and 1800s. Okay. New immigrants came to America. They brought cows with them. Jamestown had cows all over the place. Every other house had a cow. So it was a very, very local, very domesticated, very connected, the macrobiome, microbiome connection between cows and people. And the water was fresh. And the grass was green, and there's plentiful places for the cows to be in a natural environment. That was the 1700s, early 1800s. Now, fast forward late 1800s or begin, let's say 1812, the British blockade of the West Indies. We no longer had rum. So we started creating our own rum in distilleries in downtown Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Chicago. And at the same time, we started bringing the cows into the town to feed the people that were aggregating in the cities and creating population and leaving the farms. Well, those conditions shifted everything because you no longer had the clean water, the green grass, the environments that were fairly clean with sunshine and connected to people out in the countryside. Now you had cows in filthy, absolutely horrendous conditions in downtown brewery dairies They were eating this brewer's distiller's grains mash, which came from these breweries making rum. And you didn't have any clean water, no flushing toilets, typhoid fever, tuberculosis was rampant, and you had this filthy milk, distiller's milk, which wasn't even white. It didn't have much cream. It was kind of grayish blue and kind of an ugly, it was filthy. There was no chilling, there was no testing, there was no clean water. And as a result, 30 to 50% of the kids would die during the summertime when this milk was being distributed to feed people throughout these cities. It was disgusting. So that's the dark history of raw milk and why it has the reputation that's exploited today. That was the filthy set of conditions that needed a solution. Well, in the late 1800s, boiling milk became the thing to do with that kind of milk in downtown, big mega metropolis with all these cows that were aggregating these cows. So boiling the milk solved the solution mostly. Because you had filthy water, you also had other issues as well. But nonetheless, boiling milk seemed to be the solution. Well, parboiling was brought in by Strauss in 1893 as a technical solution to bringing this brewery distiller's dairy into these depots in every community where they take this filthy milk and just boil it. And that was the solution that evolved quickly into pasteurization in the early 1800s, which was a technical solution to literally a filthy problem in the 1800s. And to quote Dr. Bruce German at the International Milk Genomics Consortium at UC Davis, he said, pasteurization is and was an 18th century solution to an 18th century problem. We could do a whole lot better. Now, in 1893, a guy by the name of Dr. Henry Coit said, wait a minute, we got this milk out in the countryside that's very clean, water's clear, everything's good with pastures and the conditions are good. Why don't we just bring that milk in on ice and serve people and not have these problems? And he established something called the AAMMC, or the American Association of Medical Milk Commissions. And that milk was certified milk. And to this day, there's actually laws on the books across the United States for certified raw milk. Not all regions have access to it because the laws have been superseded with pasteurization laws. But nonetheless, California still has these laws in the books. So interesting that for literally from 1893 to 1999, 106 years, there was certified raw milk available in America. And the last certified raw milk dairy was Altadena in Los Angeles. So, and they went out of business in 1999 and sold their businesses for real estate and went on to do other things. But interesting to note, that was the beginnings of when I started raw milk was in 1999, using the high standards that California had under the certified raw milk, which started in 1893. But you could see this massive bifurcation in the late 1800s, filthy milk needing a solution for cheap milk, and the more expensive milk, which is harder to produce, that was actually being tested. Remember that in the 1850s, 1860s, the microscope was beginning to evolve. And you looked into things and saw, oh my gosh, things are moving around. And they identified bacteria. So when you were able to take a microscope and look at milk and see that, oh my gosh, that doesn't have that many things running around, or that one has a lot of things running around, you're able to do some testing to know whether milk is clean or not. So that evolved into all kinds of technologies with testing later, of course, but you can see that there was a dark history. Today's processors exploit that history, and the FDA ignores clean raw milk because you make a lot of money on dirty milk and just pasteurizing it because you can cheat the farmer. It doesn't matter the conditions on the farm. You can get that milk from anywhere, literally, and put it in a tank along with everybody else's milk, commingled together, which is super important to understand. You commingle milk from 50, 80, 100 dairies at a creamery, and then you cook the heck out of it. And that's how you make modern pasteurized milk. And that's the standards that skews filth. And that's the FDA standards for raw milk for pasteurization. Now, raw milk for human consumption, completely different path. You never commingle your milk with another dairy. You always own the milk yourself. You take complete responsibility for the health of the cow, the conditions where the cows lay down, how you clean the udders, how you put the machines on, not catching manure or flies. The conditions matter a lot. How rapidly you chill the milk, how clean the pathway is, the milk, no biofilms. You chill the milk in 2.5 hours at 50 degrees, or you chill it at 2 minutes down to 36 degrees. completely different standards. And then at Raw Farm and many farms that produce raw milk now, we test milk. And at Raw Farm, we test it for pathogens using our own PCR lab with the Thermo Fisher lab on farm. So every batch has a certificate of analysis showing that it's pathogen free. So you can see a massive difference between the standards. Standards could kind of be a boring word, but standards really, really matter when it comes to raw milk for human consumption versus raw milk for pasteurization. So that's the real quick snapshot. I can belabor this thing for the next 4 hours, but it's just a really important thing to recognize that the conditions the cows were in prior to the 1700s, going back earlier with green grass and clean water, it changed the conditions in which humans could literally exploit and dominate, or I should say, domesticate animals and safely consume it versus that really crowded, filthy conditions with the wrong kind of food, with just everything going wrong in the 1800s.
Yeah, it's really interesting that this whole thing kind of revolves around Louis Pasteur, who was the germ theory guy, and then others like Béchamp and others were really the terrain. And everything
Yes.
you're saying here is take the cow out of the proper terrain, and then you got a problem that you probably do need pasteurization, but leave it in the right terrain, and it's totally fine and better for you.
The terroir absolutely is critical. The
Yeah,
background, which is literally the macrobiome, right?
right.
The milieu, the background flora, where you're living and how you're living in sunshine and clean water is so critical. Remember that Pasteur never pasteurized a drop of milk.
Hmm.
Pasteur never did. He had the technology in France that was then brought in by Strauss to apply under the parboiling concepts to cook the milk to get rid of bacteria. So Pasteur, yes, he was very much the germ theory guy. And I think he had a little bit of regret at the end because Béchamp and others recognized that germs are everywhere. You have to make sure that you have enough of them that are friendly to make sure that they dominate those that are not. And that's
Yeah.
the background terrain theory of Béchamp.
Can we talk a little bit now about the difference in the nutritional value of pasteurized versus unpasteurized? Because this again is a little bit perplexing because you could do a little bit of research. I found one that popped up right away on Google is for Virginia Department of Health saying while heating foods may inactivate some enzymes and reduce nutrients, many studies have shown that pasteurization of milk does not significantly change its nutritional value. So if I read that, I would think, oh, then what's the difference? Why would I even risk it or something with raw milk?
The idea, the concept of defining the word nutrition is kind of a wastebasket term.
Yeah.
If you look at the word nutrition, what does it mean? The amount of fat, the amount of sugar, lactose, the amount of protein, the amount of this, the amount of that is measured in gross form, and they compare pasteurized milk and raw milk, and they don't change with pasteurization. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about that kind of definition of nutrition. And this is super important, Casper. Really,
Mhm.
really important. In 2021, there was a study done at Cornell University, the world's foremost dairy university in the world, by a bunch of researchers, and the money came from the national dairy people. It was not. It was not from the raw milk people at all. This is from the
Yeah.
National Dairy Council, and they were wanting to find out what was in raw milk, or they didn't use the word raw. They said unprocessed milk that people were looking for post-COVID. This is a year after COVID. Because the bioactives, and that's the word, bioactives found in unprocessed milk are destroyed or changed dramatically in pasteurization. The raw milk has these bioactives, and there's literally thousands of them. Some are more important than the others, but they all work together in the matrix of milk. And these bioactives are super, super anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer, anti-tumor. They're great for asthma. They stabilize mast cells. The whey protein is one of these bioactives, very powerful in terms of stabilizing mast cells, which reduces inflammation and histamine response. The cytokine storm, if you will, post-COVID, we kind of know about that. So the whole issue about nutrition, if you get a PhD from the FDA or from some dairy science university from Wisconsin or someplace and ask them, what are the nutritional differences between raw milk and pasteurized milk? Oh, they're the same. It's a scam. Ask them about bioactives that are found in raw milk, and they'll just go into stutter mode. They will just go crazy because bioactives are destroyed. And the bioactives are what brings forward the health, the functional proteins You may have the same amount of protein, but the protein is neutered. It's no longer functional. It doesn't have its bioactive enzyme associated with it. Its peptidase, its proteases are missing and gone and cooked. So you have to look at this more holistically. Raw milk is the first food of life for mammals. There is no contention anywhere that breast milk isn't fantastic for children. The World Health Organization, the AMA, every pediatrician organization, OBGYNs, everybody agrees, please breastfeed your babies if you can. Now, why? Because of these bioactives. Now, if you think about birthing, this really gives you a blueprint for how life begins in terms of the immune system for humans. Baby is born naturally through the birth canal. It's not a dry process, it's a very wet process. The baby is just covered with amniotic fluid and all of these bifidobacteria found in the birth canal from mama. Those bacteria, when the baby is latched onto the breast to suckle on colostrum, which is not milk, by the way, it's a serum component, the blood components, the antibodies from the mother's blood system. Not only the bifidobacteria from the vaginal passage, but also the suckling of the colostrum are the seeds of the beginning of the gut microbiome in the gut. That's what's 80% of the immune system or more. So then after a day or two, the mother's breastfeeding becomes not just colostrum, but then lactation begins. The lacteal glands start to secrete milk, and you get lactose sugar to nourish all that stuff you had in to initially seed the gut. So boy, that really gives you a blueprint for what the gut microbiome is about and what the role of raw milk is in terms of nourishing it when it didn't exist before birth. It was relying on mother's umbilical cord and didn't share the blood. There was an interface there where the baby's blood system might be different than the mother's blood system. They have different blood types. So it was just sharing of nutrients in kind of a sterile environment per se, not perfectly sterile, but very sterile. But after birth, no, now the baby's exposed to the world, and the only connection to mom is through milk, through the breast. So the raw milk is incredible immune system boosting, building food. It nourishes, it directs, and protects. Three things: nourishes, directs, and protects. There is actually directive information found in raw milk that tells the baby what to do because it no longer is connected via an umbilical cord to mom. So it's really, really powerful here to understand that. If you get that, then you understand why people, especially post-COVID, go crazy for raw milk. And raw milk is extremely antivirus. If you think about the studies done in Europe, where children that drink raw milk over a 10-year period of time, there's a study, the Parcel study, the Gabriel study, these huge studies done in the Netherlands and in Germany, they found that the children that drank raw milk had a much decreased level of asthma and flu and colds and ear infections. Huge, like major, just they either didn't get it, or if they did, it got over it real quick. So they didn't get sick from the flu like all the other kids did, and they didn't receive a flu vaccine. So what does that mean? That means that when you're drinking raw milk on a continuous basis, on a year-to-year basis all the time, you have the ability to be adaptive and resilient to the next flu or the next virus that's coming your way. And scientists have a very hard time predicting what that's going to be every year. They make 25, 30%, maybe they get it right, maybe they don't. But nature gets it right all the time because it makes it adaptive, very antivirus, very anti-inflammatory, gut microbiome ability to deal with whatever threat. And that's Mother Nature's blueprint. So there's a lot of science around that, but boy, it's solid as a rock.
You know, it seems almost for a lot of people probably listening, it's counterintuitive to what you've been told about dairy in some ways. Even with the whole Got Milk, campaign and everything, over the years, we've seen children that are more lactose intolerant, more allergies. A lot of doctors say, hey, dairy slows down your lymphatic drainage, causes stagnation, hard to digest. You add a little milk to your coffee and suddenly it's a lot of disruption in your stomach, right? It's everything we've been told. And then the belief system kicks in that, oh, dairy isn't that great. Even when I have some cheeses, it's hard to process for me. Is that just because we're looking at dairy as pasteurized, processed foods, and we're not really applying a raw food thought mind to this whole concept of eating well?
You're absolutely correct. That is pasteurization intolerance, not lactose intolerance. And let me give you a couple of reasons why.
Please.
Number one, you go to the FDA website. The number one most allergenic food in America is pasteurized milk. Number one, right there at the top of the list. I have a friend. His name is Kameli. He was a Maasai warrior in Kenya. Lived in the Maasai. Would have died if he did not nurse off of the udder of a cow directly. He came to Stanford University, graduated with Chelsea Clinton many years ago. But he grew up on raw milk as a Maasai and was very strong. He was a runner, perfect teeth, just a magnificent strength, human health person. Came to America completely ignorant of the idea that he actually consumed raw milk as a child. He didn't recognize that in his brain. You know, oh my gosh, come to America, there's milk everywhere. It's going to be just great. Well, he lived on Doritos, pasteurized milk, because he couldn't drink pasteurized milk. It actually made him sick. He drank soy milk and other alternatives and ate just a trashy diet, lots of sugar. He got Crohn's disease in literally a period of 3 or 4 years. And literally, he was asked by the people at Stanford University, go down to the clinic. You're going to need surgery to remove part of your intestine. He went down to the clinic and he said, what do I got here? And they diagnosed him with Crohn's disease. Well, he and I connected to a movie producer. Long story we won't get into. And I gave him 8 gallons of raw milk a week for a year. His Crohn's completely resolved. The scientist there said, the doctor said, there's no way it's going to go away. He's going to need surgery. He got rid of his Crohn's in literally 6 to 8 months. It was gone with raw milk. It would have been faster if he had consumed kefir because it's fermented raw milk. It's actually more probiotic. But he got rid of it with literally a gallon a day of raw milk. Now, the Maasai do not have the lactase persistence gene. The white people in North America, in Northern Europe generally do, but the Maasai and the Negroes do not, the blacks do not. Neither do the Asians or the Mongolians. Now, the Maasai have no problem at all digesting raw milk. They thrive on it. They become a world-class Olympic athletes on it. They fight lions and win, and they're 6'4", okay? You go to Mongolia, they're Asian as you can get, and they drink their mare's milk all day long, no lactose intolerance, and they go fighting stuff with bows and arrows and live long lives, very healthy, very happy people. But if you go to Beijing and you're drinking the ultra high temperature pasteurized milk out of New Zealand, they're all lactose intolerant and have all kinds of problems. So it's the pasteurization and the loss of the bioactives, loss of these functional proteins and these wholeness, the completeness of life. Raw milk was created by a blueprint way beyond our comprehension over 1 million years of evolution to nourish the most fragile time and period, which is a newborn. And that nourishment meant protecting as well as nutrition. So we have lost the blueprints of what creates our immune systems. And those that consume raw milk from a producer who knows what they're doing, like the Raw Milk Institute people and those that are well-trained with good standards, it's delicious. Very low bacteria count, but completely intact. It lasts at least 21 days because the shelf life is pretty long when you keep it nice and cold. But if you go to some place that has raw milk for pasteurization, good chance you're going to get sick because pathogens are just packed through it. There's no concern for it because it's going to get cooked. So that's really the bottom line, is what kind of raw milk are you talking about here? And I will point out something we can talk about, which is in Florida, the raw milk down there is pet milk. It's kind of a workaround, but in my opinion, it's a fraud, and it's enough rope to hang you because, yeah, you're not going to get protected if somebody gets sick if it's for pet milk because, oh, I told you so. It's not for human consumption, but yep, that's how people get their raw milk. So there's a real problem at the state level across the United States where we have this chaos of how you go about getting raw milk because it's unregulated in some states, it's highly regulated in other states, standards are all over the place, and that's the role that Raw Milk Institute played, was to stabilize and standardize the standards of what raw milk means for human consumption.
Well, let's talk about that because I did have it on my list. I live in Florida. I've heard a lot about it here. I'm just reading a headline, Florida mom lucky to be alive after miscarrying due to raw milk consumption, right? Yeah. And then there was Dr. Neil Stone, who's a very big skeptic of anything raw milk or anything that says it can infect you with listeria, cause miscarriages, make you damn sick, E. coli, like goes on. And it's, basically saying the only safe ways through pasteurization that was created some 170 years ago. So obviously anyone listening to the mainstream media, this doctor expert, would be a little bit frightened. That is a scary headline there, and just drinking raw milk. So what do you say to that?
I would say he's correct.
Mm,
He is correct within the confines of what he's talking about.
okay.
He doesn't understand raw milk for human consumption at all. He understands the dark history and the propagated propaganda around that history that's been going on to today, that the policies that the FDA reflect. And the CDC says it, and the NIH says it. But they're all completely in bed with industry that says this is the only solution. And they're so steadfast in this only solution, they're not even able to innovate in the types of pasteurization they do. There are technologies called HPP, high pressure pascalization, or cold pressing, which is very effective. There is UV pasteurization. There's other forms of pasteurization. They won't even evolve to that, which has less effect on the bioactives we're talking about here. Heat is very destructive of bioactives. UV is less, by far less destructive, and so is HPP. But they won't even evolve to that to solve their filth solution problem. So the doctor is correct. Based on the standards that he's been exposed to in medical school and the data he's reading from the FDA, he is correct. However, he has failed to do his deeper reading and deeper understanding of what raw milk for human consumption can be. And that is found in the European models, the Raw Milk Institute stuff, the AAMC work that went on for 106 years, the Mayo Clinic work that was used where food is medicine. Raw milk is used to literally heal people. So there's literally a deep expression of professional ignorance. It's what it is, professional ignorance, unfortunately, because he is not educated on all raw milk. He doesn't understand human consumption raw milk standards. For instance, when we produce raw milk for human consumption, we meet and exceed by far, the pasteurization testing after pasteurization. Mm. That just goes to tell you how filthy milk is going into the pasteurizer, because you can have up to 15,000 standard plate count after pasteurization under the pasteurized milk ordinance. You can have up to 10 coliforms after pasteurization. At the Raw Milk Institute, we're running 2 coliforms, and our standard plate counts are running less than 1,000. So you can see that we are cleaner than, quote, pasteurization. But in pasteurization, it's not a cleaning process, it's a killing process. So we achieve excellent cleanliness, not through killing, but through prevention, cleaning, as well as healthy cows and rapid chilling. So it's really a travesty that ignorance is being used by industry to protect their market share. In California, we've got our milk in about 500 stores. In every one of those stores, raw milk outsells the pasteurized milk all day long. And in the Sprout stores, by multiples of 5x. We blow through raw milk at the stores, and we sometimes need to have 2 and 3 deliveries a week because it sells out so much, where pasteurized milk is not. It's much more, it doesn't have the velocity in the markets at all. So where people can have the access to high quality raw milk, even though it's more expensive, when they get their lips on it, they realize, my gosh, it's delicious. And number 2, it does a fantastic job of being digested. It's easy to digest, as well as the immune systems, and their kids thrive on it. You've got a customer for life. So it's different, a different thing. It really, really is. And it's coming kind of in its own, into its own thing now, with Bobby Kennedy taking raw milk shots with Paul Saladino in the White House, right? Where he loves raw milk. He's one of my customers. He buys our raw milk down in LA. And so I think it's a little bit of a too big of a mountain to move, climb, or die on. Yeah. It's a big mountain to go to the FDA, which has literally celebrated pasteurization for 100 years under the pasteurized milk ordinance, and say, there is no God in your church. It's literally saying that. It's like going into the Vatican and saying there is no God. It's that kind of level of inflammation within the FDA you would have to do to say, wait a minute, I would suggest your pasteurized milk deal works just great for the standards and what you're doing there. Fine. But we're going to talk about another standard, and they'll be separate and they'll respect each other. And the fact you have the raw milk ordinance that talks about these high standards, and we need some guidance from the FDA, not regulation, but guidance that says states, recognize raw milk for human consumption with these high standards. And this is what we recommend. You do your own thing, but this is what we recommend. You'd have a whole lot less chaos. They've made the states really even out with the pasteurized side, where you've got pretty much equivalency going on everywhere in America, but you've got chaos on the raw milk side. And I think that's by design, because when you get raw milk organized, it goes fast forward. And they don't want to have fast forward because the industry guys are going to have to give up market share for those that want to buy raw milk.
Absolutely. I mean, it all usually does boil down to profits, and just the way it's always been, and, having to change is very difficult for them and adapt, and they just want their market share and to continue that way without any kind of challenges whatsoever. But so, there is chaos right now, but there are people probably listening saying, well, damn, that sounds good. I want my raw milk. They may not be in California, right? They may not have access. And as I understand, you can't really, ship that across borders because every state is different. What's your advice for people outside of California that are saying, well, I'd love to try that raw milk, I just don't even know where to start?
There's a website called realmilk.com where you can find a local raw milk producer. There's a website called rawmilkinstitute.org where you can find a certified raw milk producer that has bacteria testing done and submitted to the website to see what their bacteria counts are. And then we'll teach you about how to interview your raw milk producer to find out which one would be safest and best for you. So you really have to, in the absence of the FDA doing this for you or the state doing it for you, you have to be a smart consumer to understand what you want to buy when you go to a farm. What's the farmer doing? How's he milking the cows? That's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
The situation in Florida, in my opinion, is really sad, because what they're doing is they're saying, oh, it's legal as pet food, but they're selling it in health food stores all over the place. And humans go into the store and buy the milk as pet food. I'm sorry, you're not a pet. You're not a baby calf. You're not a cat or a dog. You're a human, and you have a different immune system, and you have probably a compromised immune system because of the foods we eat in America. Antibiotics, preservatives, so on and so forth. So that's just, in my opinion, it's rope to hang yourself, and it's a fraud. And it's sad because we can do a lot better. 12 states allow the legal sale of raw milk in stores. And there's about 20 states that allow the legal raw milk production through some kind of set of standards. And then there's a bunch of states where it's illegal or it's moonshine running or whatever. So it's really chaos, unfortunately. And to the people that are looking for raw milk, that are not in one of the states that are privileged enough to have these high standards, I really have to say, you're kind of screwed. You have a lot of work to do. And you may very well become the pioneer to champion change, because the jealousy of the fact that you're an American and you should have access to what all Americans have access to, including what's going on in California, New Mexico, Arizona, Washington State, Pennsylvania, Utah, Idaho, Maine, Connecticut, the places where raw milk is legal. Then you could be the champion because you're so upset that you're not allowed access to high quality raw milk and standards, because the Florida right now, in my opinion, is co at risk. The Florida Department of Health knows what's going on. They're not stupid people. They're smart people. They know that people are going to health food stores and buying raw milk for pet food consumption and consuming it in their children and their families without any testing or any standards. I spent an hour speaking with a producer who's been accused of making people sick down there. And to her defense, this was not acute illness today. This was an accumulation of illnesses over 8 months through PulseNet. PulseNet catches fecal samples from people that go to the hospital or doctors or pharmacies, labs, over months of period of time, and found that there were 21 people sickened over 8 months of time. So what shame on them that they don't have a process to go about making sure that their milk is good, high quality milk, and that farmer is well informed. Because the farmer didn't know about pathogens, didn't understand about the risk related to pathogens. She thought that if you tested the cows for somatic cell count, that would make sure the cows were healthy. That is absolutely expression of real ignorance. She does not know about raw milk. And, I put that on the regulators and the people responsible for food in the state of Florida, because they have a responsibility to train their farmers, at least expose their information, and number two, have high standards. And not just say, here's enough rope to go hang yourself so we can celebrate when you fail. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're celebrating the failure, saying, we told you it was terrible, and it's not. They're using the wrong standards or no standards. And as a result, they got themselves a debacle down there because it's made up. It's what they created. It created their own mess.
Yeah. And do you feel this is more of a federal or state thing that should be pushed first? Because obviously each state's different. You talked about the FDA. We briefly talked about Bobby Kennedy saying, this was something that hopefully he would push through, but I believe he's just tied up with so many other things that he would like to get to it, but he's seeing how, the Wall Street and politics work really over there. Do you think that from a perspective of, let's say, resistance or trying to push something through, should we start at the state level or the federal level and start to petition?
Boy, that's a great question, Casper. A really good question. The people should start at the state level.
Yeah.
And work hard with their state. And we've seen Delaware change to legal raw milk. We've seen Ohio do it. We've seen Montana, other places do it because the people spoke. The people went to the representatives and made change. I believe that Bobby has a responsibility because he knows about raw milk. At least he knows enough about raw milk. Let's put it that way. He knows I know a lot about raw milk. That he has a responsibility to kind of clean up the chaos.
Yeah.
And I think that by just simply having a meeting, it's saying, here are guidances. A guidance is not regulatory. It's not something you have to do. It's not a statute you must follow. But what is it? Very clarifying, clear message that we acknowledge raw milk for human consumption. And here are some good scientific standards you should use to produce it and to test it. This is what you should do. And the guidance could be wonderful from the FDA coming down to the states. And the states could go, okay, we didn't know that. Now we do. Let's do something better to allow for raw milk access instead of having this moonshine running and all this stuff going on where it's illegal in pet milk and whatever. Don't suppress it. Don't compromise it. Bring it up. Bring it up to its level that it needs to be through good standards. And we know how to do that. We do it all the time at Raw Milk Institute. It's well understood. And we're getting better at it. But we've been doing it now for a long time. And the science coming out of Europe, the testing has evolved now where we can do on-farm testing in on-farm labs to get the data in 12 to 16 hours. So really, if you think about the evolution of technology, it's really doubling down on how fast we can get data back. And so by empowering farmers, by bringing that data to the farm, by connecting farms to the consumer, farm to consumers, yeah, you're going to upset a bunch of processors, but you're going to have a lot of consumers and farmers that are thriving. Right now in America, we're losing 5.5 dairies every day because of low milk prices and consolidation. We're not losing cows, we're losing dairies. We're building 25 and 50,000 cow dairies, and we're losing the 500 cow dairies and 1,000 cow dairies because they just can't compete. So farmers need a way to compete, and they do that by making wonderful cheeses or raw milk to sell to people, where they take on a mantle of much higher responsibility, and they have to become trained, and they have to understand that what's going on, the responsibility, the insurance, all those things to serve humanity versus a processor that could care less about you. So it's a very evolutionary thing, but I believe, Bobby, if you're listening, buddy, hang on there. We really can make some major steps forward for raw milk for human consumption if we have guidance from the FDA. And it doesn't take 50 people in 5 years. It can be 3 people in 2 months. So it's a matter of just applying the technology you already have at NIH that we already have. We have 2 PubMed articles out, plus another 2 that are pending Raw Milk Institute stuff that's already NIH listed. So PubMed's got the data. It's just a matter of acknowledging it and stopping suppressing it. I would also say one thing, I don't see Trump as a terribly health food kind of guy. He's more of a Burger King, McDonald's, Diet Coke kind of guy. Where I see Bobby as a workout kind of guy, sunshine, vitamin D, doing push-ups, pull-ups like I do every day, and raw milk and whole food nutrition guy. They're kind of in conflict a little bit. So I think what Bobby's trying to do is create some peace to make as much progress as he can where he can. And he was, required to get rid of 20,000 people. That's hard to build a team when you're firing 20,000 people. I know some of those people that got fired contacted me saying, I really wanted to work on raw milk with you. And so he needs to hire some good people, or just simply get McAfee and Jay in the room and say, hey, let's work out a standard for raw milk. Here it is. Let's talk with Mark. Let's talk with Hugh Harriman. Let's talk with Peg Coleman. Let's get the best people in the room, and let's work it out and give a guidance to the states to stop this chaos, and let the states go forward with what they want to do in their states' rights level without the FDA actually regulating it. Regulation by the FDA could kind of be onerous. But the state regulation, I think, would be fair. It'd be local. It'd be something empowering to the farmers in the states. So it's complex, but I think there's a solution and a pathway.
Absolutely. And I find it always interesting when certain industries are actually begging and asking for regulations and guidelines, right? You saw this not long ago with cryptocurrency saying, tell us, what is it we need to do? We'll do it. We just want to be able to proceed in the best way possible. And it seems that's exactly what's happening here. It's just we're not getting those guidelines probably on purpose right now. But I do have faith that over time, things will change. It's a slow process, right, to chip away. And the demand's coming from the people right now. And that's who votes, right? That's where the voters are. That's where the power is. So the more people make it known they want to be in charge of their health, they want options like raw milk, I think you'll start to see that change. It takes time.
We've seen that. I determined 20 years ago, we've been doing this now for 26 years, but I couldn't fight the FDA because they had more money, time, and I had less time and less money. And what I realized was the one thing that would take them out in terms of their ability to have any power over me at all, because remember, they don't regulate me, the state of California does, was to completely comply with state of California and be the best raw milk produced possible and build a huge market. We got 40 million people in California with the fourth largest economy in the friggin' world. I'm so proud of that. We've got raw milk in more stores than any place in the world. Now, you build a big market that acts as an example with dollar voters, and you get judges and CHP highway patrolman officers, and you get administrators in schools, and you got high school football teams drinking raw milk. You got people all over the place drinking raw milk. And you've assured that it's very low risk and safe through your testing technologies. You've just shifted a paradigm. And I begin to wake up now in the morning going, we've won. Because you've got hundreds of thousands of people that know millions of people, and hundreds of stores and thriving markets. And you've got other farmers in other states doing something like what we're doing, because we teach this through Raw Milk Institute. You arise a market that did not exist before. And that rising market brings with it all the dollar voters, and they can be left and right and down the middle. They could be every orientation you can imagine. We, the people, love raw milk. And so it's a beautiful thing because it's not political. It is a movement, a revolution that's an evolution that happens just organically because people consume it. They want more. That supports the market. That encourages a better dialogue and rumor and all that stuff going on. And then influencers dive in. And when you've got people like, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone and Julia Roberts and Patrick Dempsey, and it just goes on and on and on. Gwyneth Paltrow, Tori Spelling, all these people, David Carr, the football player, all these people love raw milk. And so people want to emulate them and follow them. And that builds the market even faster because they have millions of followers. So you become just a force of nature, literally nature. And it's a fantastic way to build your immune system. And we encourage people to also eat a whole food nutrition as well, not raw milk with junk food. Although that's a good thing, that you put raw milk in your food diet. You want to have raw milk with a whole food diet if possible, or as much as that as possible, because that's the gut microbiome, which is 80% of your immune system. And it's going to allow you to be medically independent from our illness machine we've got in America today.
Yeah. Mark, you've obviously set the standards for, safety and your own guidelines that exceed everything else. But if there are people out there, again, that just can't have access right now to raw farm but want to emulate that whole system, are there questions they could be asking of the farmer, of the owners of these places, that'll get them a little bit closer to comfort of actually trying to get there?
Yes. Here are some key questions you would ask a farm. Go visit them, number one.
Yeah.
If a farm doesn't want to be visited, don't get that milk. You want a farm that you can trust and probably love. You want a farm you can really have a relationship with, because you are asking, asking them to provide you food at risk.
Mhm.
So go visit the farm. And what's the first impression of that place? Is that farm putting on a good stage for the consumer to come in that shows that they're clean, that they care, they're well organized, that they actually care about you, that you matter to them? Those are really important, just first impression relationship things. Then the other things is what do the cows look like? Now, you may not want to know what a healthy cow looks like or not, but if the cows are really skinny, they are not being fed well. If they don't get sunshine and maybe some pasture, and they don't get fed on off season with other feeds, and they're not looking so great, that may not be a place you want to go either.
Mhm.
You want to ask them, do you do any testing? It's a very fair question. What are your test results? What are your coliform numbers? Coliforms are a direct indicator of sanitation. And a farm that's got a good act together is going to have a very low coliform count, less than 10. They may have a spike once in a while, that's fine, but they're always working to be less than 10. And they should be 1 to 2 to 3 all the time. How fast do they chill their milk? Do they let it sit around in the refrigerator and chill over 5 hours? Or do they chill it right away on ice, with ice water? The faster you chill your milk, remember that bacteria counts in raw milk double every 20 minutes at body temperature. So you're going to have yogurt really quick. It's not going to taste very good. And that includes if the pathogen was present, that bacteria pathogen will grow like crazy too. So in order to keep pathogen levels low, by the way, a cow that's healthy does not produce pathogens. She does not have pathogens in her udder. And you clean the udder off completely and there's no manure there, that's a very good place to get your milk. But you have to protect it from pathogens in the environment, wherever, because our bodies, especially in the city with antibiotics and preservatives, are not used to the farm pathogens, especially like Campylobacter and Salmonella. So we want to be protected from those pathogens, which we are probably going to have a reaction to and have diarrhea from, and we don't want that. And if you're a cancer survivor and immunocompromised or whatever, you can get really sick, and that's not fun. So we want to prepare that milk to serve the weakest of the consumers, not the strongest. And that means diligence, and you have to ask the questions. You might want to ask them, do you know anything about the Raw Milk Institute? Most producers have heard of it. Some follow it. Some are listed and certified by it. But we've set the bar. We've changed the standard of expectations because people have heard about it. They go, oh, that's the new competitive level. I better exceed that. I better do something because people are going to ask about it. So you want to go to somebody that intends their milk to be consumed by humans. Even if they're a pet food consumer, if they're diligent, they'll do these things for human consumption because they're ethical and they're moral. So you want to make sure you go to somebody that's not after the money, but they're after the relationship with the consumer and the consumer coming back and being happy. So it's a tall order. In California, that's kind of pre-structured for you, but we still embrace that consumer relationship. We have tours all the time where we talk to consumers all the time to educate them and also kind of consecrate that relationship between us and our consumers.
Yeah, it's a tall order, but it's a worthy effort, right? To know where your food comes from, to have a relationship with the person producing your food and getting it to your plate. We don't do that anymore. We have a really poor relationship. We have no clue what we're eating, actually.
Right.
Exactly. Even when we see the ingredients, which we trust that they're all listed there and nothing's left out, half of those ingredients, we don't even know what they are. Right? When you talk about your farm and you know exactly every single ingredient because it's purely from nature. There really aren't ingredients. You are the ingredient that goes into other things.
Yeah.
And you don't just do milk, correct? You do raw butter, cheese, kefir, beef. It's truly a comprehensive farm and offerings.
Yeah, we make whole milk in 3 or 4 different sizes, gallons, half gallons, quarts. We make cream, 40% buttermilk cream. We make butter in cultured and salted versions, 2 different kinds of butter. We make cheese, which is becoming world renowned now. It's there's only a handful of truly raw cheddar cheeses in America today. Most all of them, this is really important, Casper, all of the raw cheeses made in America are thermalized, which means that they've been taken up just below pasteurization temperatures, but they're not technically pasteurized, but they've been completely annihilated in terms of biodiversity, enzymatic, and the whey proteins, all that's destroyed. But the FDA has allowed the producers to call it raw. In my opinion, that's a fraud
Yeah.
because the bioactives are missing. The flavor's different. It's just a different food product. So we are truly raw being less than 100 degrees or less in all of our production processes. Now, there's a reason why these cheese producers go out and thermalize their milk. Well, you could go out and buy cheap milk that's got high bacteria counts out of the creamery process out there and bring it into your cheese vat. But when you add in the cultures to try to make the cheese, it doesn't work because you have too much background flora. Think of the milieu, think of the
Hmm.
background flora, right? It's too competitive. You don't know what you got. So what they got to do is kill all that bacteria off so that when they add in the cultures that are intentional, the cheddar cultures, they actually work. So it's kind of a excuse for dirty milk being made into cheese. So when you got clean milk, you don't have to do that. And you age it 60 days. There's all kinds of stuff you do there, but the pH is low, the moisture is low, the aging 60 days. So it's interesting. Raw milk cheeses aged 60 days are legal under the FDA code. However, strongly discouraged by the FDA. Dr. Walker of the FDA had a big Zoom call with us back in April saying, of all the raw cheeses, the 300 samples of raw cheeses we've got across producers in America, 300 samples, you're the only one that wasn't thermalized. You're a treasure trove of information about truly raw cheese, of what actually happens when you produce cheese that hasn't been thermalized or processed. So that's why our cheese is just flying off the shelves, $100,000 a week going into Texas alone. So it's really a powerful thing that people really want this unprocessed whole natural foods. And the FDA is really not an advocate for it. They may say it a little bit on the side, but they're not really because policies say otherwise.
Yeah. Do you see that changing, in 10 years even or so, due to demand, due to changes in policies, of course, that take time? Is your kind of vision of the dairy farm that it completely evolves and basically, like you said, break up into two? You have conventional farming and all that, pasteurized, and then you have your other raw. You make the choice. They're both kind of, defined in their own ways of doing it. Is that where you see things going next 10
I
years?
do because
Yeah.
that's where I see it. I see it happening already happening.
Yeah.
And I don't know when, sometime soon in the next generation,
Hmm.
there should be an FDA, an NIH, a CDC, which sees the light based on the growth of the market. The market will be undeniable. There'll be professors teaching this. We already do have professors teaching this. Rutgers, Dr. Joseph Heckman, others are teaching this already. We have professors within the Raw Milk Institute that are certified dairymen themselves producing raw milk that are professors at universities doing this. So when you do that for a period of time and you grow the market, you grow the educational base, and people know what phony is, what wrong is, and they want right, and the markets spell it out clearly. There's nothing more clear than dollar voting to say we don't want you and we want this. Dollar voting is a very clear direction of what people want. So when you built a market so big and so profound, there will be leadership that comes in and says, I'm not going to deny that. I'm going to ride that, right? So
Hmm.
I do believe in the next 5, 10, 20 years, I don't know, it'll be very interesting on how that goes. If Gavin Newsom is the next president, well, he's been the governor of California, and raw milk is a major part of his back pocket. So I don't know. I simply have no idea.
Yeah.
But I do know that Bobby's a friend of raw milk. He's sitting in a very powerful place. And if he hears what I'm saying, I think we should have a guidance from the FDA to stop the chaos. People are getting sick from the chaos.
That's
Not
right.
sick of the chaos, they're sick from the chaos because you've got people that don't know what they're doing producing raw milk. And that is not something we should be doing or encouraging. And I think that recognizing the fact that we should do no harm, we should actually encourage good, is a very important next step. And the FDA could take a very good leadership position. And I think they could win a lot of hearts, minds, and souls right now on this if they would do that.
And a lot of trust, right?
Yes,
I feel
yes,
like these institutions need to gain their trust back.
100%.
They haven't had a great track record the last 4 or 5 years, and they
No.
could deal with a little honesty and trustworthiness there in the ways they do it. I wanted to ask you about this because I've seen things between raw cow milk and raw goat milk. What's the difference there? Because obviously you have people on both sides saying that one's better than the other, but do you have any opinion on the two?
There are 9 times more goats in the world than there are cows.
Oh, wow. Did
There are a
not
lot
know
of goats. Goats have 2 tits and we got 2 hands. It's kind of an interesting Mother Nature's combination there. The goats will eat anything.
Yeah.
They live in all kinds of conditions. There are different kinds of goats. Their butterfat globules are about 1/3 the size of the cow's milk butterfat globules. Therefore, the butterfat seems to be like self-homogenized. The butterfat commingles together in the milk and doesn't tend to separate, although it will over time. It's different. The flavor's a little different. Some people prefer raw milk. Some people grew up on goat's milk, love goat's milk. As far as the different kinds of proteins and stuff, there's slight differences here and there, but very similar. So it's up to you. Whatever you like, it's up to you. It's completely
Yeah,
up to you.
I've heard the taste of raw cow's milk is much more flavorful, and sometimes the goat's a little bit grassier to it, they say. I
Yeah.
myself have picked up on it. I like both, but I mean, it
Well,
really is tomato, tomato.
some goats, yeah, tomato, tomato. Some goats have a more gamey type of goaty flavor based on the breeding practices with bucks with the dams. Other ones don't. It's very much breed by breed. But yeah, it's up to you as a consumer.
Nice. And what's next for Raw Farm? I mean, you've got a lot on your plate here. Is it scaling, education, new products, all of the above?
Continue to do well in the market. Continue
Yeah.
to teach other farmers across the United States and the world about how to produce raw milk. We trained 185 farmers in Great Britain in 2018. The Food Safety Agency of Great Britain reached out to the Raw Milk Institute and said, "We've got a real problem. We're having a major failure rate at the dairy farms in terms of their testing that's going on the raw milk producers." I went there and literally found the problem in 15 minutes. It's interesting. I walked into this dairy. They have a certificate permit to sell raw milk to the public on the farm. And I walked in and I said, "Okay, where's the raw milk production place?" "Oh, it's over there." It was the same tank that goes off to be pasteurized. So the truck comes by and picks up milk and takes it off to be pasteurized. They were selling some milk off that tank. That tank had the good, bad, and the ugly of every cow that they had in the herd, and they weren't worried about any cow's health or cleanliness of the udder or whatever. It's all getting just dumped in that tank, and they're selling some off the side. I said, "Hold the show here, guys. Stop. Stop. Please, you're killing me. Select your 10 best cows, segregate them, bring them in first, milk them into a separate tank or a bucket, bottle that separately, and test it, and you're going to be fine." Because they weren't selling that much raw milk, 20 gallons a day of milk off the side, where they're having hundreds of gallons go off to be pasteurized. When they did that, all the problems came to a screeching halt. So there were commingling milk production practices. That was the problem, based on low milk prices. So you don't spend a lot of money on milking cows cleanly if you're going to get paid dirt for it.
Yeah.
You're going to do it cheap because you're going to lose your butt if you don't, right? But if you're going to sell your milk for 10 times much value to the public for raw, you have to segregate that milk and make it high quality, including bacterial counts, health of the cow, cleanliness, chilling. Everything has to be separate and different. We train that to keep those principles the same all across the world. Most raw milk dairies are dedicated to raw milk only. There's a couple that I know of that are dedicated to both, but in those we actually have a split operation where you actually split off a few of the cows that you dedicate only for raw, and you milk them first and you separate that milk so it never gets commingled into the system with the rest of the cows. But that's just for a couple of the cows. Most of the raw milk dairies we have are dedicated to being raw milk only, and they milk between 2 or 3 cows up to 150 cows. That's our range. And then we're at 1,800 cows with 2 dairies, 900 cows per dairy. But we have an extremely intensive food safety program. And we also pasture our cows here seasonally. We don't do it in the heat of the summer because the cows they don't like heat. 110 degrees,
Yeah.
They don't like it at all. But we do pasturing in the spring and fall, and in the summertime, in the evenings and in the mornings, to make sure those conditions are just right, and the vitamin D as well as the good fats that are found in the pasture are into those cows as well. So it's everybody doing a lot of things and building that market over time, educating, and having people that are happy with raw milk and wanting more. And that doesn't mean people in the hospital. That doesn't mean people that think it tastes bad. That means delicious raw milk with healthy, thriving people. And that means high standards, different than the pasteurized milk standards.
Yeah. And these standards, they just make sense. It's the natural way, it's the logical way, it's the way that it was intended. It feels like everyone's happy. The cows are happy, people are happy. That's what it seems we have to go back to. And it is nice to see transparency in this too. I don't think anyone's ever seen how how a cow is treated to how it's processed to what goes in a carton and what they're drinking. They just trust in the process somewhat. But unfortunately, that process has led to a lot of sickness, I feel like. And this is the antidote in some ways: more transparency, more clarity, more of a connection to nature. So thank you for all that work.
Well, it's a joy of my life. It really is, because you have a thriving farmer, you have thriving communities. Thriving communities produce happy babies, and happy babies grow up to be thriving people in the future and better citizens. It makes a stronger country. And I'm very proud to say that we are literally a week away from certifying the first raw milk dairy in Lebanon.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, about 60
Amazing.
miles north of Israel, up in about
Huh.
3,500 feet in the Lebanese
Wow.
Swiss Alps there. It's the Mediterranean Alps, I should say. But he's had a very hard time because he couldn't get TB testing done, and we had to
Hmm.
figure out a way to get TB testing done. But he has his own lab on the farm, and chills his milk rapidly, selling to his local community. And so that's the reach we have. We want to serve all humanity wherever it might be. We're in New Zealand, Australia doing training. We're all over the United States. We've done some work in Mexico, South America, all over Canada, in Great Britain. We have a far reach, and we don't pursue farmers. They pursue us because we don't have time, energy, or money to do so. But when farmers pursue us, the cream rises to the top, and we gather the best to be examples for everyone else to follow. And I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, it's really a testament that this is going worldwide.
It
And
is.
it's a good
It
one.
is.
It's a good showing that things are changing. People are wanting this. People are getting back into it. I think the pendulum's swinging, and I think our health will improve because of that. So thank you again for that. Where can people learn more about Raw Farm, Raw Milk Institute, yourself?
Well, rawmilkinstitute.org is a wonderful place for archives of all the medical benefits of raw milk. It's a nonprofit. It's able to put all the PubMed data up there. It's all there. You could read for a week about all the benefits of bioactives and all these things. We also have a pretty strong Instagram, TikTok, and all that kind of stuff at Facebook, at rawmilkinstitute.org. Raw Farm USA, rawfarmusa.com is the largest producer of raw milk in the world here in California. Where there's five other producers of raw milk in California as well, but we're the one that's in the stores. The rest of them are selling farm direct or through some drop points or something like that. You can go there and learn about what we're doing with our branding, and the influencers, which have gone crazy, helping us and supporting us, including MMA fighters.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure athletes
UFC.
are jumping on this, I'm
Oh
sure.
yeah, athletes. We have local football teams that are we donate 140 pints or quarts of raw milk to their workouts, and they go nuts. They go home and tell mom and dad the first milk I could ever drink, and they want to buy more. So it's not only marketing, it's also education, and it's also humanity. It's a beautiful thing to do, a volunteer education, and to encourage understanding and education. So get to know your local farmer that might be struggling, and encourage them to understand more about raw milk. I wouldn't drink his milk until he understands it, but I would encourage local farmers to jump on the bandwagon to serve people, not processors. Because I'll tell you that processors, they lack the ethical, moral fiber to support farmers. They ignore you when you go bankrupt. When you commit suicide, it was a passing thought. It's not something that was really a tragedy. And dairy farmers have one of the highest suicide rates in America. So, farm to consumer, and farmers over pharmacy, that's the way forward. We do need good drugs. We need good surgeons. We need all these things, but it should be the backup plan to prevention so we can be healthy. When we're, in 1962, where six percent of the gross national product was spent on healthcare. Now it's 25%.
Oh, and going up.
That's not going in the right direction. Yeah, there's
Mhm.
people getting rich on it, but it's bankrupting our health as Americans. And it's really kind of mirrored in a lot of other first world countries because that model's been propagated internationally. We need to get back to food as medicine. Hippocrates was dead on. Food is medicine. Let food be your medicine, medicine be your food. Do no harm. and all disease begins in the gut. And Casper, it's been awesome meeting with you today. And education is something you and I are, I think, really on board with. So good job.
Oh, 100% I agree with you there. And I'm just psyched that people have more and more access and are being educated by people like yourself. So again, Mark, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story and your message.
My pleasure, my brother. Take
And
care.
be sure to visit Mark's website. He said it again, but it's rawfarmusa.com. We'll put all the major social channels up in our show notes. Until next time, keep writing your own healing story.